We start with you, Zedbai.
Hey everyone, Zhang Yi here. You can call me ZY or E in short. I'm from EdgeConneX, as shown here, Senior Director of Corporate Development for our APAC market. For people that are not really familiar with EdgeConneX, we are a hyperscaler data center provider, full value chain from investment, design, development, operations, and our footprint is global spread with 1 gigawatt just hit it this year. And in terms of our APAC, we're pretty young. We're 4 years old here, but in the past 4 years, we actually entered quite a few markets, including India, China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, especially recently. So, which is the most recent exciting news that we bring to the public. Early this year, we secured 350 megawatt campus in Kansai area of Japan. And Japan being one of the focal point of growth in APAC, it is actually our strategic market that we are going to keep grow there.
That's awesome. We actually discussed having one fun fact that's been keeping you awake or something that's been keeping you awake for the past few months or weeks. I know you've already given it away, but if there's anything else you want to add on to that.
Yeah, all right. Actually, the fun fact to keep me awake last night was this panel. Kidding. Yeah, the Japan is actually a very exciting one that keeps me always awake and a lot of attention in the past 1 year. Yeah, and it's going to be. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Dan.
So Dan Kesler, I'm the co-founder of a platform called DigitalGarden. We started the organization to basically bring global and Japanese leaders to solve the problems that exist in the Japanese data center market. We spend a lot of time with the different branches of national government, and the goal is to advance policy, more deal making, more digital infrastructure. So that's a platform that we run in Tokyo. And separately from that, I was not public yet, but also have a platform for data center land and power infrastructure development in Japan that I co-founded and own with my co-founder as well.
Fun fact, or what's keeping you awake?
So I had a very interesting opportunity to spend about 4 sessions with Katsuhiko Kawazoe-san, who's until April, the CTO of NTT Group, global chair of the ION Forum, spent quite a bit of time together. And it was amazing to me to hear some of the advancements that are going to come to market around ION. Some which I think people don't really understand the implications of what it means in terms of data center locations, in terms of what you can achieve from a latency perspective, from a power perspective, and was really amazing to spend time with him directly as someone that it's been its life's work. It's a technology that's been in development for over 60 years now. So it's quite transformational and cool.
That's awesome. My name's Udit. I've been here last year as well, so thank you for inviting me back again. I'm with CBRE, part of the regional platform. So CBRE does everything end-to-end related to data centers. So we start out with advisory all the way up to facilities management. Without further ado, just setting the broad agenda. So what we'll do is we've broken this down into 3 core parts. So what we'll do is we'll talk about Japan's emphasis on energy-efficient, sustainable data centers. We'll touch upon the big AI question in the second half. And then finally, what we'll do is we'll talk about how Japan's alliances and collaborations are allowing them to be more competitive across the Asia-Pacific region. We'll end with some crystal ball gazing, so stay tuned for that. So maybe just starting out with the first bit. So if you had to explain the Japan data center market today to a 5-year-old, how would both of you sort of explain that? So maybe, which one of you want to go first? Go for
I can go first. Yeah. By the way, I have a 5-year-old daughter, so I think I'm very good at it. So depends on which lens you are looking at in describing the data center market in Japan. I would like to kind of zoom into Japan and look at the different regions in Japan, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyushu, Hokkaido, right? So one observation I have is that Tokyo, as a playground, is actually the single largest one in the town. But it's getting busier and busier, right? And the ticket is actually getting more and more expensive, right? And the space is crowded. The facility, to a certain extent, may not be like suitable for the future AI requirement. So, of course, one thing that happened is actually the kids actually start to go to the other playgrounds, right? Which is more affordable with more new gears. But also, the playground manager, which is the government, is also trying to put in some house rules, right? And also trying to redirect the kids to some other playgrounds to make sure that the whole town is actually well managed. Yeah.
All I can say is you're a really good dad. I don't think anyone would be able to explain it that well, but Dan, any thoughts you want to add on?
I think the story to me about Japan is that there is a lot of myths around what are the problems and how solvable those problems are in Japan that to me are a lot more addressable than what people think. I think Japan to me is a market that in many ways doesn't make sense, because if you start from the fundamentals, Japan should be by far the largest beneficiary of AI infrastructure in APAC outside of China and Asia and India. But for a variety of deep inefficiencies that don't make any sense, it's not yet, at least. And I think what we're working really hard to do is to solve some of those problems. They're imminently solvable. We'll get a little more into this panel, but I think it's some shocking inefficiencies that restrain potential. Maybe it's a little complicated for a 5-year-old, but.
Got it. I think, Zhang Yi, you touched upon a great point, which is that there's decentralization, right? So that's starting out because of the government's also trying to decentralize. What are some of your thoughts on that topic? One is there's a government push for decentralization, but then it also has to make business sense for operators and investors to go to some of these, tier 2 locations within Japan, as it's being called. So what are some of your thoughts on that particular topic? So maybe we go first, Dan.
I think there's been, talking about inefficiencies, a little bit of disconnect between the government policy and what they're trying to do and what the private industry actually needs. And I think the topic of regional expansion of digital infrastructure in Japan has taken a very simplistic form, which I don't think it's accurate. So it's basically been, look, you're in Osaka or Tokyo, or then you can go to Hokkaido and Kyushu. There are many other options. And I think if you start from the fundamentals of what applications are you solving for, what requirements are you solving for, what latency, what power capacity, what et cetera, timelines to deliver capacity, there's a lot of options, right? And that ranges from outer Tokyo to other areas around Japan. And I think there's a lot of opportunities that go beyond that. And I think there's a whole room to create more communication between the government and what they're trying to accomplish. We'll talk a little bit about the new GX program for gigawatt scale hubs that's been announced 2 weeks ago, actually, in Japan.
Yeah, why don't you actually talk about that right now?
So yeah, I think shockingly didn't make that much news. Japan released a government program in very early stages to support specific gigawatt scale campuses. The requirement to apply is for a gigawatt or above scale, achievable within a certain timeline in a single location. The program is not, from our conversations with the relevant authorities, it seems like starts with increased help in power connection and power infrastructure, all the way to accelerated permitting and support of municipalities directly in doing it, but will likely at some point come with subsidies as well.
Got it. Zhang Yi, you've got some experience going out of Tokyo, so your thoughts on this?
Yeah. As I said, we are one of the kids that actually going out of Tokyo. So as mentioned, we recently secured a 350 megawatt in Kansan area. The reason we go that market is because we do see that there's a strong push from Tokyo Metropolitan to other markets, but also there's quite a strong pull effect from the government. And to us, when we look at a specific site, we always look at whether there's sufficient land for the scalability. There's also sufficient power within a good timeline supply to the site. And also, there must be a very good connectivity to those sites. So I think what I would like to see is that the government actually playing a role that help the data center providers as well as customers to improve the physical and infrastructure environment to help us to grow in the market that they want us to go. So far, although different players actually start to look into different markets. For us, our first landing is in Kansai because we do see it has very good infrastructure. The government is relatively accepting data center. The power is actually pretty sufficient and timely supplied compared to the major market like Tokyo. And the fiber connectivity is also something we found actually pretty interesting, that although you feel that Kansai, Osaka area is actually quite mountainous, but you are able to actually find certain good hyperscale sites with very good connectivities.
That's amazing. Is the wait time still 36 months to get power, or has it shortened just for?
Yeah, I would say that it's all relative, right? It's if you look at Tokyo, you probably look at a site with power in 5 or beyond 5 years, right? But if you go to the other area, you do see sites with stranded power for 3 years or even shorter. So those are the sites that you actually want to snap out from the market quickly.
Got it. Dan, next question to you. So there's also a lot of discussion around changing nature of power mix that is probably there in Japan. So what are your thoughts on that particular topic? And then there's a lot of discussion around SMRs. Do you see that becoming a reality in Japan anytime soon?
I think, first of all, when we talk about the issue of people say that this expression, there's no power in Japan. That's a very inaccurate statement and very partial statement. First of all, Japan, for those who don't know, has 2 different grid systems, right? Why they did it that way, no, it's a hard question to answer, but the Western Japan utilities versus the Eastern Japan utilities, so Kansai Electric, Chubu Electric, Hokuriku Electric, Kyushu Electric have actually an oversupply of power, an enormous amount of, depending on the utility, hydro, there is some nuclear that's still active, solar, wind, etc., right? Some utilities up to getting to 70% of their power mix being low carbon, if you include nuclear. Now, I think if you think about Japan, one topic that's been very interesting that people are saying publicly, we had at one of our sessions that we did a couple weeks ago, a very senior LDP politician that came and said openly, we need to reactivate the nuclear plants. At some point in time, nuclear was about 30% of the energy mix of Japan. It's about 8 now. The target is to get it back to 25 by the year 2040. I think there's a very interesting component in which you actually break down which utilities and which reactors are actually in line to get commissioned faster. These are utilities that don't necessarily have the demand load, and they're turning back 1, 2, 3 gigawatts of power capacity, and they're asking, what am I going to do with this power? So there's no shortage of power in Japan. I think SMRs, the topic of nuclear is still touchy, obviously, given Fukushima, but I think before you even get to that, I think SMRs is a longer-term whole thing that needs to get started. There's existing reactors that are just going to get turned on in the next year or 2, and we're talking about gigawatt-scale amounts of generation that need to go somewhere to utilities that actually can't transmit that power to TEPCO, right? So huge opportunity on the renewable side, I think, and low-carbon power generation, at least in Japan.
Zhang Yi,
I definitely concur with Dan, what you mentioned. Just to add on a little more from a provider perspective, when we look at entering into market and a secure project, there's always this mix of land, power, fiber, commercial, customer requirement. So you do see certain areas with quite fair bit stranded power, but you potentially will see that you don't really have a lot of developed land in those regions. When you look at those land, those are like rice field, which potentially may take another 3 to 4 years to replot, rezone, and redevelop. Those are the stuff that, although even you have power that to be supplied in the 2 years' time, you probably still need to wait another 5 years to get everything ready for service, right? So, but one thing that's very interesting is this gigawatt initiative, that you do have the power that is going to be supplied in a large scale, in a timely manner. You have the government potentially encouraging you to locate your data center next to it, which means they should be able to help you to solve the land issue, and also help you to build the fiber connectivity. Those are the areas that actually it will be very interesting to explore.
That's really interesting. So I think 2 takeaways. One is like there's capacity which is in gigawatts, which is available. A very wise tech bro yesterday gave some insights on the semiconductor space and how the Japan government pushed it. So I won't take his flair away. Dan, do you want to give like a 2-minute summary of when the Japanese government really wants something, how they get something pushed out from a semicon space, and most likely how that's also going to translate into AI factories? Do you want to give that anecdote?
So I think, one of the things that's interesting in Japan is there's this perception that things move slow. And I think the reality that we've experienced in a lot of things is that it moves slow until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, it moves extremely fast. If you look at the ability of Japan to scale up the semiconductor plants in southern Kyushu versus what's been done in Arizona, Japan has been miles more aggressive, clear, and successful at doing it. Half of the costs are subsidized by the government, so about $10 billion level of investment. There was a very clear framework to accelerate permitting, to get everyone lined up to do it. It moved extremely fast, way beyond schedule, while in the US they're still figuring out what to do. And I think the CHIPS Act was a lot more confusing than what people expected. So what I'm very excited about is seeing all the different government bodies that touch digital infrastructure, and it's not a single body, right? You're talking about MEDI and MIC and the Digital Agency and the Cabinet Office and all the way to the Office of the Prime Minister, and you look at the alignment around the importance to Japan of create sovereignty in their digital infrastructure and their push to do this, they will get it done. And I think Japan, even though it's considered a developed market, I think it's really in its infancy. And we joke with some government officials too. We say, look, Malaysia is beating you at the moment, and that seems to trigger a little
I
soft
think
spot.
Malaysia is beating everyone, given its growth in the past 2 years. Zhang Yi, so probably the operator perspective, like, is Japan an inference play or a training play or both? And then if you have any thoughts around the regionalization of LLMs and if we're going to see that play out as well.
Yeah, in terms of whether Japan is an inference or a training hub, I would say that at this moment you probably see most of the use is actually inference in Japan, because one fact that everyone knows is the dominance of the AI now is mostly US-led and some part of China-led LLM and AI tools, right? And it's so natural for everyone to just tap on it and develop from there. But that does have a few aspects to be considered, that a sovereign AI, and also especially for homegrown training AI, is necessary for Japan. The first aspect is actually the security and independency. You just imagine that all these US-led and China-led AI tools is actually increasingly shaping our modern life, right? I just want to ask the whole forum, have anyone ever never used ChatGPT or equivalent tools
actually, let's find the boomers in the room. Like, has anyone not used ChatGPT? Let's have a raise of hands.
Yeah.
All right. So there's no boomers. That's a good thing. So
Yeah. I think even just I'm not even I would even admit that actually to prepare this a panel, I also used ChatGPT, ask him, hey, can you give me some critical questions and let me answer to you, right? So you just see that actually how in depth that the AI is actually changing your life. But you just imagine if this is actually happening to the critical industry and business in a nation, that is something that you probably want to make a balance at least, right? So that's the one consideration that sovereign AI is probably something that not only Japan but also the other nations may need to consider. The second thing is I would say it's more the accuracy and efficiency. I think just now Oliver mentioned you just compare a generally trained AI versus a AI that fed with the local data, historical context, and also local culture. Then you will find that there's definitely a big difference, and the local trained AI is definitely well positioned for the local use. And the last one is specialization. Right, this is something happening in the U.S. A lot of these AI tools are developed by those high-tech firms, startups, which is definitely very good. But you actually start to see a lot of industrial players like financial institute, biomedical sector start to actually tailor-make their own AI. So these are the things that you definitely want to have a generic AI to support your daily life, but you also need certain very specialized local home-grown AI to support certain needs.
I'd like to make a small comment on this, which is, if I think about the investment case for a lot of these things, if I look at it from the perspective of an investor, the ideal case of what I would like to have is optionality, right? Where my sites today can do one use case, tomorrow can do other use cases, right? And I'm not tied to a specific use case in the long term. If I were to tell you today that Japan could offer 6 gigawatts of capacity of ready land in 2 years with a construction cost that say it's 15% more expensive than instead of 200%, right? With a 6 millisecond latency round trip to Tokyo and in Osaka, right? Where you can deploy large-scale GPUs today for training use cases, but in the future those could get converted to several other inference use cases. I think you would see a lot of demand coming to Japan regionally, not only domestic demand, just because you have that optionality. That reality does not exist today, but is one that is totally viable, right? And I think if you think about construction costs, you think about power, you think about all these things, they're all solvable issues. We spend a lot of time on them. So I think if the beauty, I think, of the digital infrastructure industry is imagining what could be. If we would have sat here 4 years ago and said that Johor is going to have, I don't know how many gigawatts of capacity, everyone would be, that's insane. But when the right things come together, then someone starts and a snowball effect gets created, and that reality exists. And I think that's what's starting to happen in Japan and what you'll see.
Yep. I think we're all hoping for that as well. So just in terms of, the data sovereignty, so like there's obviously the conversation we've had earlier, which is around the American companies, the Chinese companies. How is Japan sort of thinking about data sovereignty? How is that impacting, some of the demand take-up that you might be seeing in your data centers? That's probably part one of the question. Part two is, do you see like increased demand from the neoclouds coming into Japan, or is it still early days?
Yeah, I think for the first question, I think it's already. The AI is already benefiting the local industry, the different sectors, right? I mean, one simple example is even the Japan government has already started use those AI trained model to predict the earthquake, right? So those are the things that actually it's already happening, and it's actually going bigger and bigger, right? Then for the second question about neocloud, I would say that. Interestingly, as Dan mentioned just now, you don't really see the kind of large deployment in Japan yet. But you actually observe in the market, you actually do see quite a bit neoclouds start to look at Japan and trying to require for capacity in Japan. Because if you look at the entire Asia Pacific market, Malaysia, Indonesia, and also now Thailand is actually very busy, I would say. But there's one fact that is these are actually those emerging markets that you definitely have advantage in affordable price, larger scale, and also with this you actually can put in a lot of AI training model there. But if you look at the other side of the world is well is the AI going to deploy in those established markets, right? Just now we talk about Australia, now it's Japan. These are actually two of the few developed markets that in APAC, but you haven't seen a very large growth in terms of AI yet, but it's actually coming. It's just like everyone is actually standing at the door, trying to look into the room and trying to see how I can enter these markets.
Yep. Dan?
I think on the topic of sovereignty, it's not one size fits all. So on one side, you saw a headline of the Nikkei last week, the creation of a group of partners to develop a domestic LLM that involves purely Japanese companies, right? So Sakura Internet on the data center side and infrastructure side, and ICT on the data side, and Preferred Networks on the chips and stuff like that. So I think that's a very domestic independent model. The headline was basically this: we don't want to rely on China and the US for all of our AI infrastructure. You have some of that. You also see things like SoftBank and OpenAI doing a partnership, and this bringing those LLMs into the country. I think what you'll see is a mix. I think what Japan doesn't want is a situation where it's entirely reliant. People forget about the scale of this country. This is one of the largest IT markets in the world. This is not. It's a, used to be third, now fourth largest economy in the world. So it's a country that merits its own independent infrastructure, and I think doesn't want to be reliant just on China and the US. But so I think it'll be a mix. You'll see more of the domestic players take a bigger role, and the government pushing for that as well. But then you'll also see Anthropic and OpenAI, and you'll see these guys in that market and creating partners and see deployments from them as well. So I think it'll be a mix.
Yeah, just want to add on one factor is we mentioned that actually we don't see those large deployments yet. But one interesting factor that you will see is something is actually preempting is that just now Bevan talked about there are 4 new submarine cable going to connect to Australia, right? In fact, for Japan, you are also going to see another 4 to 5 new cables connect to Japan in the next 3 years. Some of them connected from the North America, some actually connect back to Southeast Asia. There's also connection go up to South Korea. So you can actually see that the tech companies, the end users actually start to propel the growth of Japan. And Japan actually being the focal point is something that we do see there's a lot of promising opportunities.
Got it. Maybe sort of pivoting to the question around Japan's dominance. So obviously Japan was one of the first, it was one of the 4 tier 1 markets across Asia Pacific. So the others were, of course, Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, and then you had Tokyo. Do you feel that Japan's current status and the ability to introduce AI factories will allow it to sort of dominate the North Asia market, or will that also extend to the larger Asia Pacific market? Or do you feel it's going to be more of a collaborative effort where Japan's sort of collaborating with all these other countries to sort of also sort of mirror what has happened in Singapore and Malaysia, right? So Singapore's obviously been the dominant hub, but then there was a spillover, and then we've seen the emergence of Johor. Do you think that sort of a story will play out? Obviously, this is crystal ball gazing, but to the best of your abilities and as imaginative as you can be, what do you think is going to happen?
I think if you take all the fundamentals, as I mentioned previously, around where you would want to have major scale AI factories, barring some constraints that existed today, from capital availability, from generation capacity, from rule of law, from any, when you go into some of these investments that people are making, right, and some of these will get to the tens of billions of dollars, I think there are a lot of people around the world that will feel a lot more comfortable if they're doing that in a country like Japan. And I think that as, some of these problems start to get resolved around the ability to build cheaper, to build faster, to have faster access to large-scale power, et cetera, you will see a lot more in Japan. I think Japan, obviously is in an interesting geopolitical space. Is in some cases, from a defense perspective, very much associated with the US, but also is a huge trading partner with China and actually tries to maintain a certain balance. So I think Japan has a very interesting role to play as a regional hub beyond the enormous domestic needs of what itself it needs.
All right, you've sold it. So if anyone has $100 and they want to bet on any country in Asia Pacific, bet on Japan as per Dan. So Zhang Yi, your thoughts?
I would say that if you look at the whole Asia Pacific, the pie is big enough to support multiple AI hubs, right? It all depends on where those end users, those hyperscalers, shifting their load and also type of business among these different AI hubs, right? I'm not really into this, but I'm pretty sure they have quite differentiated thinking in terms of putting load in Malaysia, Thailand, and compared to the load in Australia and Japan, right? I would say that, so that's why it's not really like competing for resources. It's actually more like complement to each other. Then in terms of the Japan itself, I would say we as the investor and developer, we always look at a country, a market in a few elements: political stability, infrastructure readiness, whether the ecosystem is there to support the industry, supply and demand, of course, commercial visibility and affordability, and also liquidity in terms of financing, in terms of whether you do have enough funding and off-takers for your project, right? So Japan is actually well positioned with all these elements lined up. The only thing that I feel potentially may become a challenge is actually the resource availability and also the financial affordability, because you do see the one single largest data center hub, which is Tokyo, is actually becoming more and more expensive from all the aspects. But the good thing is you do have those other emerging markets that you can tap off, which have 20-30% cheaper land, 20% cheaper power tariff. And the government is also putting more subsidies to support that. So those are the areas that I think create additional opportunities for Japan.
Got it. So in summary, $100, if you have $100, all $100 in Japan. If you have $100, $70 in Japan. Is that a fair assumption, or still like $100 in Japan?
I would say we should have more than $100.
Okay, fine. Okay, so to summarize, crystal ball gazing, 2030, your views on Japan, how do you see it playing out?
Just to clarify, previously, obviously there's going to be development across the region. I just think, but if you think about 2030, I think, from active capacity somewhere around 2.5 gigawatts that Japan has live today, I think that number, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to 10 or above, right? So if you...
5x.
Sorry?
5x.
Yeah, at a minimum.
That's amazing. That should be the headline for tech capital as well, if they need to put something on the website.
Yeah, I would say, firstly, definitely bigger market, right? Whether it's 5x or 10x, I don't know, right? But I'm 100% sure EdgeConneX will be part of the game, right? The second thing, I think it's more a wish. It's actually faster. I mean, one very critical challenge that we see, and not only us, but actually every provider see in the market, is actually there's quite a lot of process to follow to get a data center down and up and running, right? So there's actually quite a lot of technology outside Japan that you can tap off. So whoever that actually can crack this and bring those technology into Japan will definitely be a game changer. So faster is actually something that it's a wish. And of course, the third one is greener. Japan being really the largest, one of the largest tech hubs, but actually in terms of sustainability factor, is not really there. So I would say that in the next 5 years, potentially thanks to the phenomenal growth of AI and also the joint effort of the customer, the providers, as well as the government, I do hope that actually we can have a more greener industry in Japan.
Perfect. Any Q&As? We're almost on time. All right, with that, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.